And I hear something just pouring there. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our second Comic Art Collector Conversation. So thanks for tuning in. I know we already have a nice gathering in the studio today. So I think we've got like 40, 50 people tuned in already on Facebook and YouTube. That's great. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, folks.
On a Sunday evening, on Mother's Day, no less. So I hope for all the mothers out there, or gentlemen with mothers, I hope you wished your mother a fantastic birthday. See, it's a long week for me on Mother's Day. So
one of them. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, my holidays are a mess. So anyway, I hope everybody had a good week, though. It was definitely a much less stressful week for me than it was leading into this last show. So I'm very well rested. And as Jill pointed out earlier, I got the haircut that nobody noticed, and I feel at least a pound lighter. So I'm really happy about that. My wife, Maureen, is very happy that we no longer have the, this ragged mop top. So again, welcome everybody to the show. I got a lot of cool artwork to show you today that everybody's picked out, and I'm not sure how we want to choose starting off. I mean, I know, we were thinking, Jill, maybe you start off, but I know last week you started off. So do you want to start off again, or would you like to choose somebody to begin this evening?
I'll go, man. I'll go. I'm with
Mother's
it.
Day, yeah.
Here.
Okay.
Just
empower the women.
Let's do it.
I was going to say two quick things before we start, Joe. One of the things we all talked about that we thought was amazing on the last show was, while we had the topics that we were talking about, a lot of the questions came up in chat, and a lot of the collectors in the chat answered those questions. So that was great, because we can only get to so many. And so absolutely encourage, the side conversations or the questions focused on the topic within the chat, because that just helps everyone out, because we can't get to them all. And the second thing, Jill and I talked, we were going to assign everyone a nickname. It was going to be the professor and everything, but we're going to take a deep breath, and we're going to allow you guys to suggest nicknames within the chat as we go through, and we'll just see how that works out at the end.
PG-13, of course.
Luxurious.
Doesn't it? Yeah, that's very nice. Thank you. And I would add too that we got a lot of great suggestions on topics for future shows that were emailed to me and that were mentioned in the chat last week. I have a very nice long list. So if anything comes to mind while we're talking tonight, just feel free to mention it. I'm going to write everything down as I see it come through in the chat too, so that we've got a nice long list of things to work on going forward. No matter who stays in the chat or cycles out, the more topics we have to cover, the better. And
this is real life, folks.
That's right.
It's hilarious. It's like those survival shows where you catch your meal.
That's right.
But no, I do appreciate also the fact that a lot of our conversations that we had actually extended into the CAF galleries and discussions on the CGC boards, and even just emails that followed up with a lot of us. I mean, we all appreciate the kind feedback, and certainly, again, these conversations are here for you, and we want to make the topics relevant, share some perspective, but also, be sure to take your cues on what's important to you, and see if we can do something that can help make this hobby even more enjoyable for all of us. So,
yeah,
I agree. I completely agree. And yes, PG names would be best. Something that we can actually put on the screen and display proudly.
Good stuff.
Recommended, but not mandated, right?
Exactly.
I was going to call you the face.
Strongly encouraged. Yeah.
And I don't mind Mojo. Sounds okay to me. So that's a nice first shot at mine.
Oh, thanks, ML, to attack me properly. That's great. Oh man. Well, Bill, do you want me to start with my topic, or would you prefer to start with my art?
Oh, that's true. That's true. We probably should do. Well, you know what? Let's go with your topic first this time.
Okay. So the topic I picked for this week, especially because it's a little timely with things starting to open back up again. There have been a few dates announced for different shows, so things seem to start to be coming back to convention season. Maybe not some of the bigger ones until 2022, but just some little reminders. So I kind of picked for my topic etiquette when you're talking to artists at their tables at conventions. Some people might need a refresher. maybe you're brand new to this collecting and you've never been to a con before. So again, trying to help the new guys, or maybe some people that need a refresher, or maybe I'm going to tell you something and you think, oh, that was me at a show. Maybe I shouldn't do that. So this is kind of the how to talk to artists at a convention PSAs. So first things first, please, 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 they're people. They are not zoo animals in cages. Say hello. Acknowledge their presence. I've worked a good friend's table at a couple of cons, and it's a little disheartening when people walk up, they look at the art, they never even acknowledge you. You're sitting right there, you're looking at them, and then they just walk away. You're like, okay, all right. So say hello, make some conversation, look them in the eye, smile, something. I mean, I don't mean prom queen at every single table, but just, be yourself, be a little natural. The other thing that I want to say is portfolio etiquette. So depending upon what an artist has out on their table, sometimes it's prints, sometimes it's a portfolio, sometimes they have published pages sitting there. No matter what is sitting there, please, please, please don't put your bag on top of it. Don't put your drink on top of it. Don't put your, cup that you've got for your kid on top of it. It is art. So treat it like art, even if it is a print. So just don't be putting stuff on top of the portfolio. I always try to find an empty table, like, maybe somebody didn't show, an artist didn't show, and use their table if I need to rebag and board, or, look for books for the next artist table that I'm going to visit, or writer's table that I'm going to visit. Use the spaces that are there, not the artist table, because the other thing we got to remember is that's where they're making money. That's where they're doing business for the weekend. And if you're clogging up their table trying to look through your backpack, or, your bag, or your string backpack, whatever you brought, you're detracting from the opportunity they have to talk to more people, to do business, to really show off what's in their stacks, whether it's prints or arts or portfolios. A couple of things that I want to say, and I know I'm a little bit on a diatribe here, but I feel passionately about this. I've had weekends sitting at tables, and if you've ever said this to an artist, think twice before you say it again. Quit saying, "Did you do this?" Yeah, what they did. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting there. And please don't say, "Oh, I can only draw stick figures." They hear that over and over and over again. And what are they supposed to say to that? I'm sorry. I mean, I'll give you lessons. I mean, it's uncomfortable. How do you want them to respond to that? So those are the couple of things that instead I suggest find something about their art that you like. Hey, I really like your use of shadow. Your use of color here is great. I think your inking, it reminds me of so on, someone else, oh, your pencils are really tight here. I mean, there's so many things that you can say to an artist to engage in conversation, because they are there to talk to you. They are there to, find out what you're looking for. And if you say things like that, a lot of times they'll say, oh, you like those inks? Well, here, my best inking work is in this stack. Or have you checked out this portfolio? And then you're really engaging in a good conversation. The other thing that I would just say is if they have something in a portfolio and you reach the end of their portfolio, it's kind of a be kind rewind. Put it back to the beginning of the portfolio for the next person to page through. I can't tell you how many portfolios I would have to, go back to the first page or go back to the first double page spread in a portfolio, just so somebody else, the next person that comes along, has an opportunity to flip through the book. So, I mean, those are a lot of my tips. So I'll kind of go around the horn and see if anybody else has something that they want to add. But those are kind of like my top tips.
I thought Colin here had a good one where he said some artists don't like to be compared to other artists, good or bad.
Right.
Yeah, that's usually like the thing that I would never say to another artist, because to me, everyone's pretty unique. No one wants to say like, oh, you draw just like Bill Sienkiewicz, or when I look at your art, I think of J. Scott Campbell. I mean, that's not what people want to hear. And so that would be, I completely agree with Colin on that.
For me, Jill, one of the things you mentioned was saying hi when you come up, right? And someone in the chat mentioned that social skills and comic collectors don't necessarily match up at times. And that's fine, right? But at the end of the day, folks are sitting at that table because of the fans. So I think what can be misconstrued at times on the other side of the table, meaning the actual artist, is that somebody might be being rude, but they might just be nervous, you know. So that's what's tough about it, is that, you know, not being rude, but you're just being a little nervous. Just kind of relax, say hey. Like you said, they're ready, willing, and able to kind of to talk with you. But that happens all the time. Just walk up, flip through, and walk off, right? I mean, to me, at minimum, saying hi, like your stuff, or even admitting I don't know your stuff, but I'm at this event. I want to look at art. Would you suggest some stuff I could look at? I've done that a couple times myself. Usually goes over well.
Good advice. I'll add that, you know, oftentimes you come to a convention and the tables are actually crowded. You're not the only one approaching the artist. So there's a certain patience that's required. If you see 2 to 3 people ahead of you, don't try to push to the front and get your topic in. I mean, let those other collectors really have their time. But again, if you're in the front of the line, be conscientious about people in line behind you. You know, keep your topics. And if you're there alone, you can talk all you want. But if you have 2 or 3 others in line behind you, kind of keep it to 3 to 5 minutes, and always feel free to follow up with the artist directly. Say, can I have your email? I have some things that I want to kind of talk to you about. I don't want to waste your, you know, this opportunity for other collectors. And also, from my experience, I did a lot of, you know, artists signing things. You're responsible for bringing the pen and taking the material out of the bag so that they can have ready access to it. They don't want to, you know, unpack your backpack in front of them and wait for you to get things ready. And also, like if you're creating a jam piece or you're doing something, you know, bring the pen tells him or her what you want, because if you're trying to create something and they pull out a blue Sharpie and it messes it up, it's not their fault. You know, you have to give them clear direction. So I would just add that.
I guess, you know, I haven't been to too many conventions, and so this is kind of advice that I would take when I go to my next one. Is I don't really know too much about the artist personalities, because you mentioned, Larry mentioned, you know, go throw drinks on, I forgot what artist he says, desk, and just prepare for the backtrack. Yeah. So, you know, every single con posts their artists that are going to be there, right? So if you've got 2 to 3, 4 targets, you know, chat with the Facebook groups, chat with your friends, and see if you can get an idea of what the artist personality is. I was on a Zoom call, and I think it was Nick Bradshaw that was talking about Darwin Cook, and who was a Canadian with a New York attitude. And you just didn't go and be rude to him, right? I would have no clue. So, you know, when I walk up and, you know, slap him on the side, I probably would get a negative reaction if, you know, God rest his soul, if Darwin was there. So do a little research on your top targets, ask your networks to go back to that topic from last week, and try to get an idea of the personalities and how you can interact.
Yeah. And they have stuff posted at their table too, right? So whether it's commissions or prices or whatever, it will behoove you to look at it. And I'm joking, but not, because at times, you know, just asking questions that's like plainly right there, you know.
Yeah, buy something.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll post on social media ahead of the show. Right. Oh, I'm going to have prints, this prices, commissions, these prices. So you can do a lot of that research ahead of time. Sketch Prices and Facebook also has a great file that they keep fairly well updated on there. That's an attachment to the group, where if you want to research, okay, what is this person, the ballpark of what this person normally costs. Don't be surprised if you get to the table and maybe it's like, you know, $20-$30 more expensive. Because prices do tend to go up, but it'll give you a good ballpark if someone is the $500 range or the $50 range. You'll have a little bit better idea.
I remember being at a show and someone asking, so they saw the prices and they were going to ask about, I think, a 2-character commission, like what would it be if I got 2 or 3, something like that, and it was going to be more than what's on there. And in the same breath, right? But these prices are kind of high. It's kind of like, you know, you're kind of shutting the door on yourself there, right? I mean, ML, yeah, he mentions don't complain about prices, but you got to have a little bit of, you know, just kind of know where you are, you know what I mean, in terms of these conversations you have, who you're talking with, but they're partially there to sell things. So just pay attention to what's going on the table.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And a lot of these artists have reps. And the reason the artists have reps is because the reps are responsible for the business transactions, right? So, you know, talk to the artist, share your stories, get your book signed, you know, show your appreciation, and then, you know, maybe transition the business aspect to the artist rep, because I don't think the artist at the show really wants to kind of talk about, you know, price negotiation or anything along those lines. I mean, you can try it, but there's a reason they brought their rep along. So, if that situation arises, it might be more tactful to go to that direction.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll note that's not specifically about the artists, but be kind to the volunteers. Be kind to the people that are there that are all they're trying to do is keep the lines where they need to be and make sure that everybody has a good experience and can get to the table that they need to. Sometimes if there's tables next to each other and one has a long line and the other one may not for whatever reason, still be respectful of that other artist's table that's sitting there. Try not to line up in front of a table that is not the artist that you're going to see, because they're also trying to do business, and the volunteers there will help you, but just be respectful of them too. They're volunteering, they're not paid. They don't need to have any grief from anybody.
And a lot of times those volunteers are family members, they're significant others, they're children of the artists, and sometimes they're even other collectors. So again, be respectful, and I think you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Very true, very true. And I liked RG's suggestion where he said he's checked other CAF galleries for sketches from that have artists that they might be going to see at a show, and so they'll ask him questions about how to approach that artist or what they might be able to expect when they do that. That's always a good thing as well, because you may have a list of artists that you're targeting when you go to a show, but if you've never had an experience with them, asking other collectors, whether it's through CAF or on Facebook in a sketch group, isn't a bad idea to get a feel for what you might expect as far as prices are concerned. Whether or not they may or may not have their rep here. I know we've got several people in the audience who've sat behind the table helping artists like Fred and Jeff Wedding. I mean, so just having a game plan going in and to have an idea of what you want to do and how do you want to present yourself in front of those creators is pretty important too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, someone said bring cash.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, bring cash. Don't depend on there being an ATM there. There may not be an ATM that works there. Yep. So bring cash.
Or cryptocurrency nowadays, right?
Yeah, you can end up
you never know.
I've got these grocery coupons and some stamps, loose stamps. Maybe I could.
Art to trade.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I do like what Jill said about kind of experience. Remember, these artists, they'll continue to go to cons and meet fans as long as it's enjoyable to them. And we have to know that a lot of them will turn that spigot off if they have a bad experience. So, again, keep it fun for the hobby by making it a good experience for the artists, and they'll have many happy returns.
Quite true.
Very
there are lots of positives or good advice in there. That sometimes artists are at the show and they have no interest in sketching. They're there really just to kind of relax, take the weekend off. And not every convention that an artist goes to is really a working convention where some of them just want to have the time off, and they get to hang out with fans in a lower pressure and environment than
I remember one of my early cons. So I was standing in the line to meet Jim Steranko, one of my idols or artist idols, and a friend of mine, another collector, was giving me all the lowdown, based on experience. Don't reach out your hand. He doesn't want to shake hands. Don't mention this. He doesn't want to talk about X, Y, and Z. Don't reach behind. Don't go behind him and talk in front so you can see. I mean, it was even these artists have very peculiar and unusual habits that you just have to keep mindful of, and especially those folks who aren't used to the media show that modern conventions are. I mean, you have to be respectful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Especially after COVID times, they may not want to shake your hand.
That's right.
I get it.
One of my more awkward moments, and I never even talked to the artist when it happened, but I was walking through a show, just taking pictures randomly. It was one of my within the first year of CAF being out there, and I was doing a con report or something. And there was Mike Mignola, not 15 feet away from me, doing a signing, but he was kind of by himself. I didn't really realize the long line or whatever, so I just kind of stepped over and took a photograph of him without saying anything. Because I didn't want to interrupt, but I was like 5 or about 10 feet away, and the flash goes off, and Mike looked at me like I was the biggest jerk on the planet. And so even something as simple as that is could be an awkward moment where you just realize, I should have asked, do you mind if I take your photograph? Right. And I didn't even think about it. So I think I didn't take another photograph of a creator that weekend after that happened. So
if you did that with John Byrne, his 6'9" bodyguard would have just chucked you over the floor.
That's funny.
Right.
Or whoever the guy is.
Did me, right, James?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
was just throwing bows, trying to get in line.
that's right. That's right.
I will actually dig up that pic while we're talking, and I'll show it later because I do have everything nicely organized here. So,
Nice.
no, this was a great topic, Jill.
Good one.
Really, yeah, without question.
Yes.
It's important. Should we go to Art then? We want to show some.
Yeah, who would like to go first tonight?
I'll kick it off on the art side if you want.
All right.
To get things rolling.
Sure. Here we go.
Really excited about these. So this is Silver Surfer number 7, page 42 from 1969. This is from the gallery of Rick Whitelock, who's actually an old friend of mine. He and I used to collect Golden Age comics together, and he's been collecting original art, I guess, for a number of years now. These are pieces that he just posted. He's posted actually a number of these Silver Surfer pieces over the past week or so, and I mean it's stunning. Let me take you why. So these are it's Silver Surfer, of course, 18 issues, and you'll know in the hobby there are certain issues in a run that are generally very coveted, and this is a special issue because this is the Hair of Frankenstein, where he creates an evil doppelganger, and Silver Surfer and Doppelganger actually fight in this epic war scene out in space. And it's the last part of the book, and those pages, like this one, are just incredibly rare and coveted. This is art by John Buscema and inks by his brother Sal Buscema. So again, you have John and Sal contributing to this page, and the 4 panels. When you have 4 panels that in the book, it really showcases the art of this 1969 issue. So you have the evil doppelganger in panel 1. You have that Kirby-esque crackle in there as he's trying to proclaim kind of how he's going to use the power of the surfer to kind of do harm. And he knows that the surfer who's going to be willing to make any sacrifice to save these human insects is part of the narrative of the story. Second panel, great space shot. Silver Surfer seeing the evil doppelganger heading toward Earth, realizing that his humans on Earth that he's vowed to protect are going to be in danger. And then 3 and 4, just great images of the surfer on his board, or the doppelganger on his board, flying in and going for a kill shot in some poor city. But he's talking about how he's using this as a way to entrap the surfer to kind of try to protect these human insects. And again, just a powerful melodrama of this wonderful story. What I wanted to point to is that those panels not only are just great, but just good surfer images. Well, surfer's about as hot as anyone right now in comic artdom. Also, this was in 1969. So in 1969, if you focus on panel number 2, we didn't know much about astronomy. This is August 1969. This is 1 month after the moon landing. We had just ventured in outer space. The knowledge of the time was that all the bright lights in the sky were planets and stars. So you can see John and Sal doing their best to create 3-dimensional planets out there. What we realize today is those points of light are actually distant galaxies, and what was the known universe back then was just our Milky Way. So now it's much bigger. And I just think there's some historical perspective that they're trying to imbue to the comic, even though there's no information really on what it lays out there beyond Earth. And I think that I have a page from this run. Scott Williams does. 2 Italian collectors, Ivan R. and Carlo M. These are significant collectors that were looking for pages from this run and cherish the ones they have. But Rick Whitelock, who posted this one, he actually posted 5 pages from this run, and you can just see all the surfer collectors out there just jaw-dropping. So congratulations, Rick. This is a terrific page. Love the imagery. Really stands out as one of those great representations from a very well-loved Silver Surfer run. And I'm sure a lot of folks are now reaching out to try to see if you'll part with them. But knowing you and knowing your love for surfer art, I know these are untouchable.
Do you know how big it is? Is it
It's regular size. Regular size. But again, this latter part of the run between Silver Surfer 7 pages 29 or 30 through the end page 47, which Rick also has the end page where he laments he kills the doppelganger. He talks about his legacy and what he vows to continue to protect the Earth. Just really powerful stuff, and it's those deep black space scenes where you have surfer versus the evil doppelganger. You basically get the artist to draw two surfers. Those are treasures in and of themselves. So, but these are the pages that I don't know. I won't speak for Rick, but these pages surfaced around 6-7 years ago, one auction, and they disappeared. No one knew where they were. They've been kind of buried in collection. So the lesson for me is these, things that you're looking for, and we'll get to someone's topic on how to hunt down art, but it's out there, and they may not be on CAF, and they may not be, actively showing their art, but it's there. So with patience, it creates a lot of great feelings for the hobby when what I think pages that are great and significant like this, when they all of a sudden appear, and for me, the fact that it was posted by a friend of mine that I've known for over 2 decades, really good guy. We got together in Florida once. I'm on a trip many years ago. Anyway, he's got a great collection. He just started posting stuff to his CAF gallery. So if he gets a good reception, leave him a bunch of comments. Hopefully he'll start posting more and more of his art, because I know he has more treasures than he's willing to reveal right now. So Rick, I know if you're out there, congratulations, great page. Really happy for you, buddy.
And I should add, before we go to your second piece, that I will put all the links to the artwork that was selected tonight into the show description over on YouTube and Facebook within the next 10 minutes. So anybody that wants to click out and take a look at those artworks in more detail can do that while we're talking.
Perfect. Dino, real quick, what's interesting about that page too is that, I saw that 4 equal panel layout, right? And I know Kirby used to do that a lot. And I think naturally doesn't necessarily facilitate the best storytelling, but not for these guys, man. And each panel felt like its own splash. You know what I mean? That was pretty cool about it too.
You see the panels are filled with art, and that was part of Sal's magic. He put everything into those pages. So go in CAF, look up Silver Surfer 7, see some of those battle pages, and they'll floor you. So really proud to have one myself, but I know I'll probably never get another one because people like Rick are out there hoarding them.
It's good to have just one, at least one.
That's right.
That's right.
All right. And your second?
My second pick is a little bit more modern. This is 2017. This is Batman White Knight, #1, page 15 in the collection of Eric B. I know Eric's in the chat, so I certainly want to congratulate him on this page. But this is a very important issue. Black Knight. This is by Sean Gordon Murphy, and when he created Batman White Knight, it was the first graphic novel of DC's Black Label. So it was a very monumental new kind of launch outside the continuity of normal comics, but it used just Sean Gordon Murphy's artwork to a T. And this is a fantastic example of what I call mosaic narrative. We talked about panels and splashes, but what this does, and you'll see some pages that can do this well, it's incredibly challenging, but it creates a very, very complex and intertwined narrative, which I'll walk you through. But this is the origin page of Joker. And just by the way, for those who haven't read the story, the White Knight is about the Joker regaining insanity, and he wants to reverse his opinion in public by going into politics. So he becomes the good guy running for office, which drives Batman crazy. So the White Knight isn't Batman, it's actually Joker. So having a page from this series and this issue, initially, if I thought, I'd love to get a page from it, I'm thinking, I'd get something with Batman and maybe get something with everyone wants Sean Gordon Murphy's kind of car or vehicles, but I would have missed this page, and I think this is one of the jewels of that entire issue. In fact, the whole run. And let me walk you through that. So this is the origin page of Joker. You see from the left-hand side, we're not talking panels. This is a mosaic. So bear with me. So you have. You see Gotham or bust. So you see Jack Napier. This is the first time ever, by the way, that his identity was revealed. In the regular continuity, people don't know his identity, but Jack Napier is the guy that was revealed here. Jack comes to Gotham. He's carrying his hop sack, so he doesn't have much. Gotham or bust in the background. It looks like a movie, but it tells a lot about how he's risking everything to make it big here. He goes as a comedy. He just wants to make people laugh, but you can see from the hand, his things go wrong, and his cards, the things that would make a magician or a comedy act very powerful, actually slips off. It slips out of his hand, and he becomes laughed at. And you can see it trailing down all the cards, and we'll get to what it does, but you see the sign, it says, why don't you love me? And that gets him angry. angry, and he starts thinking about, God, I'm not a success. And it turns him. You see the bubble. He becomes angry. He goes into the acid, and he becomes the Joker. He attacks the Bank of Gotham. The imagery of him with the machine gun is just extraordinary. And then you see underneath him, the image of him in a jail cell with the outline of a Batman right there in the silhouette. I think it's just extraordinary. The J in the bottom, which of course is Joker, makes the whole splash feel like a playing card, right? And I think when you look down, the cards still fall. It creates a little narrative, kind of gets the eye to move down the page. It ends with the Joker on the floor being pushed down in Arkham Asylum, and you can see one card there the first time you see the Joker card. So he's essentially gone from, hopeful and happy to, a villain, someone who just hates and despises the town, and that's how he becomes the Joker. On the right, which is even more amazing, is you see the town of Gotham, it's the silhouette of Batman again, and you see the heart there. It's actually a melted heart that's dripping on Harlequin. Harlequin, of course, is Harley Quinlan. You can see it in the newspaper. She's actually Joker's love interest, but it's a one-sided affair. He abuses her. He just takes advantage of her, and this is her basically saying, in my mind, that heart, that love that she has for him, has been kind of never satisfied, and it bleeds on her. It makes her actually a villain as well. She aims the gun at him to kill, to kind of shoot at him, but out comes like a Joker. Out comes the flag. Why don't you love me? And this is Harlequin saying, Joker, why don't you love me? I mean, I do everything for you. And then you see the imagery of the Arkham Asylum there, the city. Everything seems to come together in just one. It's a splash, but it's actually a narrative. And I think that's what's most powerful about this page, is Sean Murphy is able to use a panelist design to create an interconnected mosaic of a story that presents the Joker's origin and his relationship to Harlequin in a way that's pretty unique. So I was just floored when I saw this page. I really wanted to share that with those folks here. I know Eric Belanger is in the chat room, so I want to congratulate him on just a jewel of a page, and he should be very proud. He actually picked this up and he knew it. When you look at the pen and ink, the ink wash, there's razor blade cuts to make some of the vertical lines, just a tour de force of art. And I'm one that sadly doesn't have a John Gordon Murphy. He's on my want list, but if I were to aspire for one, a page like this would be kind of a grail of that type of artistry. So congratulations, a good page. I wanted to share it with you guys tonight, but I love it.
Great choice. I love his
It's a
work.
great story. Their take on Harleen Quinzel is different than a lot of the books you've read, and it was a good fresh take that I liked. I really loved this book too. I love that page.
Well, I'm going to override everyone's nicknames, and Dino is the professor now. That was pretty amazing.
Is that a Gilligan Island reference? So you have Gilligan, Skipper, Thurston Howell, and his wife.
There's no blonde. I'm not ginger.
So, that's awesome.
No, but that's what when I look at a page,
say,
that's kind of what strikes my eyes. The kind of something new, something creative, and he put his neck out to do something like that, but he carried it off, and I admire that.
And it's not easy to merge those separate images into one splash and make it work without it. That's much easier said than done to pull that off. You did it exquisitely. Yeah.
I was gonna say the first thing I saw in that one was the building in the background that looked like Batman. And then I've been to Nashville many, many times, and if you guys ever seen the AT&T building there, it looks like Batman.
Born in Nashville. We call it the Batman building. Yeah.
Yep. So I was like, is Gotham really Nashville?
That's right.
All right.
But I think this is another one of those good examples that this is probably one of those things that Sean Gordon Murphy, since he wrote it and did the art, it's just right. One of those things that probably if the artist and the writer were separate people, it wouldn't be conveyed as well as that.
That's right. And again, I want to repeat the lesson for me is don't be too strict on your want list, because on my want list would be Sean Gordon Murphy, a Batman page, or something with a cool vehicle, and this wouldn't have checked that box. But again, it'd be hard to trade that for another page in my mind.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, so who would like to go next for our panels this evening? We've got James, Cleo, and Dino left.
I'll go.
Mr. Cleo?
All right, Cleo.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and go this clockwise direction. At least
I like it, yes.
Right. All right, so my topic is around hunting down and tracking down art. And actually, after our call or last week, got a couple emails with some good feedback I shared with the group here, and actually a couple suggestions for topics. And one of them came from Ruben Martinez, and he said, "Love to hear about tracking art down." I said, "Well, let's do it. Let's do it this week." So this is, my initial thoughts, but really want the group here to chime in. Not the be all end all, of course, right? Just my perspective. When I think about tracking down art, you had mentioned the word, Dino, patience. And I think about patience and perseverance. I pair those up when I think about looking for something. So you got to have patience. If the more specific you are, you got to be patient about it. And perseverance to continue to try, because it may not happen quick. So for me, y'all know I'm a big Black Panther art collector. And on one end, there's collecting nice Black Panther art. And on this end, there's getting a page from Jungle Action 24 by Keith Pollard, and it's this page. And I'm in both camps. I'm doing both, right? And the more specific you are, the more avenues I think you got to take to find that specific page. But when I boil it down, I think about this patience and perseverance thing. I take in kind of three places, and one is be ready. There's been a couple of times, whether it's on auction or an artist just finding art in their cabinet that they haven't looked at in years, where things pop up when you least expect. I think we've all experienced that at some point. So you just never know. So you want to be ready in terms of what you think it might take to pick that up. So connecting with the folks that may or may not get that at some point. What might it cost? Doing your research from that perspective. And if there might be a piece you have to move in order to do it, maybe keep that in mind. So just being ready to pick up whatever you're thinking about getting. That's usually more around a specific piece. The second I think of is exhausting all avenues. So one of them for sure, I should refer to our video last week regarding networking, right? That was big, right? So that's huge. Is getting on CAF. I'll give Bill a little plug here. Getting on CAF, looking at galleries, see who has art like what you're looking for, and reach out to them and say, "Hey, you mind telling me where you got it? Do you know of others that may that have this stuff? Would love to talk with them so you can get some insight into where some of this stuff might be." So reach out to folks. I would say display what you got too. I mean, in my experience, when I'm putting stuff up on Comic Art Fans, I explain what I like about it. I feel like people are more apt and willing to talk to me about whatever else I'm asking about. So I would just maximize CAF that way. And in terms of doing your research, pour over the auction sites, Heritage, Comic Link. A little trick on Comic Link, right? They don't have their history posted once auctions are over with. But right when those auctions open up, bid on anything you want to keep the history on so it stays in your history. I know that this page cost this much 5 years ago because it's still in my history on Comic Link. So keep that in mind. So do your research in that regard in terms of pricing. I would maximize social media. I think some others could speak to that probably better than I can, but follow those artists, follow those dealers that have the art that you may want at some point. And you got to stay on top of those art drops. So that's a list of I guess, things that I think of when it comes to exhausting avenues. And then the last really is, for me, it all takes time, right? The more you are persistent and the more that you do all these things, it's going to take some time. So think about where you want to prioritize. So for me, that's become, super important, just all that I got going on. So there's focuses that I have that I kind of look at week to week, and other stuff that I kind of let sit for a bit and simmer. Maybe I'll get around to at some point. So those are my thoughts around tracking things down. Would love to hear others, and I'll look at what's going on in the chat too.
That's awesome. I guess the only thing I would add is use technology, right? I think CAF, Comic Art Tracker, HA, eBay, all of them have the ability to post alerts. So as soon as something gets put on CAF or Common Art Tracker, you'll know based on how you've modified your alerts that piece is available. So that can kind of help you get ahead of the game. You'd be surprised of how many alerts might show up at 2, 3 in the morning because some dealers burn the midnight oil. But that would be my biggest advice, is just craft your alerts on any platform you can.
Yeah.
I agree with what Khalil says about trying to network, using that as your advantage, because you want as many eyeballs out there on the market looking for stuff you like. And what that means is connect with collectors that look for the same type of art that you're looking for, because chances are they may already have a piece, so they may be passing on something that you may be interested in, or they may be coming up across things that may not be their price point, or that doesn't fit their ideal, but it may fit yours. So do that. I also think that I found more people have been successful having a theme that's very easy to identify. So we all know Jason is an X-Men guy. We know Khalil's a Black Panther collector, and Romita Man. You're creating that brand that people think of you when they see that page. Otherwise, I meet collectors all the time, and they give me a want list that has 22 names on them, and I'm like, well, I collect about half of those, and so it's hard for me to identify, what pieces really belong in that collection. But when I really think I know a collector, when I can zero in on the 1 or 2 or 3 types of pieces that are kind of urgent or top on their want list, that's what I note. And if I see something like that, I'll pass those along.
For sure. So, someone mentioned too here, don't skip an auction. And it's tough, right? Everybody's got their time that they've got a lot, but yeah, I wouldn't. If you can get on everyone at least to see what's happening, do that, because you just never know. And I agree as far as getting that profile, Dean. It's kind of funny. I posted a piece last week. It was a Black Panther piece, and it was from the Dueling Dealer. It's my first win, and I wasn't on the show, but I was in the kitchen, and I got like 3 or 4 guys saying, "Hey, Khalil, there's a Black Panther piece on, coming up right now. You might want to take a look." So I did. I worked it out, but I've got those network of folks, and it wasn't my plan to get a network of collectors to look for Black Panther art for me. It wasn't my plan at all. Or was it? But we've ended up there, so it's pretty cool, man. Yeah.
So what I'd add to that, I mean, yes, in the chat, you're totally right. Like, build up your war chest. Like, be sure that you have the funds available when you need to pounce. I mean, that's so super important. If I'm looking for that page and it's 5K, you got to have 5K in the bank or somewhere, or do something so that you can pounce on it right away, because the timing is everything, for sure. Yeah. And not everybody will accept partial payments, and or payments over time. So just be aware of that. And then also what we talked about last week with the don't be afraid to make some offers. I mean, polite, well-structured, genuine offers of collectors, in CAF or through your network, and you never know, you may be able to score a piece that way. Or talk to people if maybe they just scored something that you really like, and they're not probably going to want to let it go for a period of time. But there's still nothing wrong with reaching out to somebody and saying, "Hey, I really love that piece you just got. If you ever change your mind, or if you're ever trying to sell something to get an even bigger piece, more expensive piece, I'd love to talk about it." There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and remember the golden rule, don't just expect people to do things for you, and don't reciprocate. So if you want people to share with you kind of opportunities to buy art, give them some things that, hey, I noticed this is something in your collection. Hey, did you see this? And even they recognize that you've helped them. If you want people to help you network, right, then you should maybe say, do you know this collector? Yeah. He or she collects similar. I'll introduce you, and then create some goodwill, and that collector would probably reciprocate at some point down the road, saying, you know what, Sally was very good at introducing me, or to somebody else. I'm gonna introduce her to someone who could be helpful to her collecting. So,
and Dino, part of that too. James, real quick. Part of that too is when I talk about patience and perseverance, it could take a long time if the more specific you get. Right, this page from this book. But to your point, Dino, if you could kind of not get so specific, right, and kind of say maybe I'd be good with this. And broaden a little bit, you can check that box and feel good about actually getting a win. And potentially, if that piece comes up later, you could look at it straight up or whatever. But yeah, the more specific you get, I think it's just going to be tougher. You got to know that.
And I would say when you go in to target a piece, not a wide net, but cast a small net. Have a couple different threads going at the exact same time. Yep. Granted, you don't want everything to hit at once. But don't put all your eggs in one basket going over for a single piece if you think there's a time frame associated with it, right? Or there's a high probability that the collector might not release the art, or you might lose it at auction. But don't be afraid to cast a small little net on the topics or the characters or that you're looking at, because it's numbers game and close rate to an extent. Coming from a sales background, and you'll grow your collection. So, like Khalil said, patience. Also, don't be afraid to walk away from a piece because there's always more art.
Right.
It's one of a kind, but there is always more of it.
Right. And
Doesn't feel like
remember,
it in the
last
moment.
week we talked about personal value. Make sure people know what is really high on your personal value list, and not just, oh, I'm looking for something that's 20% under market value, or I want something cool. I don't care what it is. I just want. I mean, you're never going to get what you're looking for. But if you say, this is the type of art that really resonates with me because. And people can pick up on what's genuine, and they want to make you. I like to love nothing better than making an introduction or a referral where someone gets a piece of art they love, and I feel like it's just paying it forward in the hobby, because I've certainly benefited from my share when I started collecting.
Steve just said, recently I reached out to a CAF member about a piece I knew he once had. He was able to reach out to the new owner, and now it's mine. Mini grail of sorts. Yeah. Right.
Good.
That happens.
Mm-hmm.
It does. Yeah. I mean, same thing can be said for reaching out to a dealer if they've sold something in the past. If you find it in market data, in CAF's market data for dealers, you could, contact Berkey or somebody, and they may be willing to kind of at least point you in the right direction for where that art might have gone. So, you got to keep your nose to the grindstone and really explore all avenues out there. So, because essentially you were talking about searching for art. And so you got to leverage everything that you can possibly do, from Heritage's market data to CAF's dealer data. And again, all those relationships are super important too. But like Mikhail had mentioned earlier too, I have a lot of Google alerts set up, not just for news-oriented things, but some art preferences of mine as well. And I check those alerts that I get every day, and I found things that I would never have thought. Finding art that's on Craigslist, not because I'm searching Craigslist, because I've set up specific Google alerts to push those things to me. So you got to be savvy when you're really on a mission for specific artwork.
And then the luck helps, and it'll get to you eventually. Like Nick Barucci was talking about how he got a call from Mike Berkey on his birthday, who had a Grail piece of his, of the Flash 300 cover, and he didn't even associate Nick with Flash collecting, but he called him anyway because he was a good customer. He had made a relationship, and it ended up being a very fortuitous call at 2:30 in the morning on his birthday. But luck will happen to you at some point, so be ready.
Quite true.
Ready.
All right, good topic, Khalil. So who would like to go next with the artwork?
I guess I'll follow up Dino on the artwork. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Whoever.
We'll give it to James this time. How's that?
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I don't mind the follow-up. Mine will be short and sweet.
All right. Here's your first one.
All right. This one is in Ben Bressel's collection. This is Even Kalio, or I don't want to butcher that name. But it's X-Men Legacy connecting cover set. And I think a lot of people that know me pretty much understand why I got attracted to this. It's large art. As Anthony says, I like big art, and I cannot lie. It's X-Men. It's multiple generations. It's action-packed. It's modern, which is nice. So anyway, yeah, just a whole bunch of X-Men doing X-Men things. The layout is reminiscent of some of the classic X-Men covers. And just really, really enjoyed the piece, was instantly attracted to it.
Yep.
Did you just say I like big art and I cannot lie?
That was a reference to Anthony.
That's right.
Yes, it was.
and note, there's 2 claws out Wolverines. That's got to be said for something. See, there's one in the middle and one on the left.
Extra snick.
Yeah,
I love
that doesn't hurt.
I love the depth in the bottom left with Wolverine coming at you. Yeah, this is real nice depth and movement there. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got everything that you can want in an X-Men piece. So I was really happy when he was able to pick it up. I'm glad it went to a collector that appreciated it as well.
Yeah, his profile's grown in recent couple years a lot. Coelho, I think he's one of the new Stormbreakers. I think that's what Marvel calls them, what the Young Guns used to be.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for getting the name right, Khalil. I appreciate that one.
I don't know, dude. I'm guessing.
I had a really nice piece from him when he did the a Venom run. It was a double-page splash. Surprise, surprise. That ended up going to Paul P. But I missed that piece, and so I need to pick up something in the future from him.
This is a nice one. There are actually, let's see, 153 pieces of artwork by Coelho on CAF. I didn't even realize there were that many. That's a pretty nice count there.
I think Annabelle Kirby reps them, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of his art is on her website.
All right, that's a good
Yes,
plug
that's
for
right.
Annabelle. Yep, I believe that's true too. Oh. Nice pick.
Nice.
And this next one is very eclectic.
Yeah. I picked this one for a
Nice.
couple of reasons. First, it kind of demonstrates kind of the tangential art collections, for the comic art hobby. Just how many, other mediums that you have art that people collect are. Second, it's almost just as nostalgic as comics to me. I mean, it's Nintendo power, right? I would say in some instances more nostalgic, but I haven't played too much old school Nintendo, unfortunately, as I've gotten older. And it's not so much, I think Stephen Reese is in the gentleman's collection. It's this piece. I picked it because Super Mario Kart's an all-time classic. But mostly it's a demonstration of his entire collection. He collects all Nintendo and Nintendo Power-focused art. And he started posting a whole bunch of it recently. And it was just one nostalgic hit after one nostalgic hit. You got some old school Street Fighter, some Mario, some Zelda, and Super Mario Kart. So, I mean, if you want to see something different, plus, something that, ties at the heartstrings when you were a little kid and play Nintendo all night, I encourage you guys to kind of check out his collection and see what some of the art is like.
Who said we stopped, James?
I know. I got a little Nintendo Mini. I'll come to it.
Well, I can actually, I'll show you some stuff in a portfolio I got here because I love old gaming related art or that sort of stuff. And I was at New York Comic Con probably, and it was around 2005, and an artist, and I'm not even sure of the name, so I won't even try to look it up on my CAF gallery, but he had a stack of all these old illustrations with Mario, and they were Luigi, exactly. And but I mean, I've got everything. I've got a whole portfolio of them because I mean, I've got Luigi and Mario in a spaceship, but it was all from a trading card game. So I bought and they were all maybe $10 a piece. I mean, you can't get anything more fun than that. And it was all from a educational card game for elementary age children. But I love this kind of stuff. It reminds me of my youth, that what you'd see painted on the side of an arcade machine, and I love that just as much as I love comic book art because it's the things that really attracted you to those sorts of things. And so yeah, I dig that. But I'll tell you, I brought it back to Mike Berkey's table. There was a bunch of collectors there, and okay, I won't say who it was that said it, but this one guy just kept looking at it and looking at Mike and saying, "Yeah, that's really good art, isn't it, Mike?" And you'd collect that, wouldn't you, Mike? And Mike was, he wouldn't say anything, but this guy just kept ribbing it, and I'm like, well, I don't care if you don't like it, I like it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, if you looked at the past HA auctions, and everyone looks at the art, but if you look at the video game auctions, they'll blow your mind. A copy of Mario 1 going for $660K, but just about every graded copy of a video game was going for $5, $10, $15, $20, $70, $80,000. So maybe getting in on this video game art is kind of the base level, because comics shot up, comic art shot up. Hey, maybe you don't know, Bill, you might have the Dogecoin of a comic art.
You never know.
And there's a lot of congruity between comic books and arcades and video games. I mean, I remember growing up in the 70s, going to arcades and comic shops. My entire allowance kind of went to those two, and pizzas, I guess. But there's this incredible nostalgia with video games. People don't realize that video games as an industry dwarfs the movie and entertainment industry in Hollywood. I mean, it's like 3 to 1. And when people are engaged in a video game, they can play it. You read a comic book in 15 minutes, but you can play a video game for 6 hours, if not 6 days. And it's so enveloping that you develop a huge nostalgia. There are video games that are on their 10th or 12th iteration, Call of Duty, etc. And there's those classics like Pac-Man and Galaga and Zaxxon and those Nintendo, which we all grew up seeing evolve. And it's a very global industry. So you have bidders for these video games coming from Japan and Korea and Canada and the different countries around the world.
It's video games, it's animation. If you've seen some of the auctions recently for animation, there were some heavy metal animation sales that went up here recently, and all the Tarda ones were going for great big bucks. And I mean, look at D&D art, fantasy art, sci-fi art. I mean, there's also a lot of great guns in that. I mean, Frazetta was really known for a lot of the D&D art he did and the fantasy art he did. So and that's a little bit adjacent to your typical comic book art. So I mean, all of this stuff is going great guns, which I think is great.
And a plug for Bill in his top 3 want list, I believe, is a D&D art by Mark Willingham.
Bill Willingham.
Bill Willingham.
Yes.
So that's top 3 on his list. If you find one, please let him know.
I would trade almost anything for a 3-inch spot illustration of a dwarf with a battle axe. That's all I want from anything early TSR by Bill Willingham. Though it has to be Bill's artwork.
That's right.
Thank you.
But see, Khalil, going to your point, just knowing what people like and just getting it out there.
And it's funny when I think about nostalgia and James Rowland and video games. I don't know if I ever thought of it this way, but when I think back, I kind of did. Capcom. They would release NES games and they'd have that kind of purple blue border around Capcom on top. And I was always excited to see what they, just by virtue of them releasing it, I wanted to play and see what it was. And I think a lot of that came from the whole Mega Man series. That was my thing when I was a kid. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I know recently, just kind of a tangential art that just explodes in value. The painting for Risk, the board game. So a guy found the painting for Risk, the board game, and he put it up on Facebook for sale. And, offers started coming in at $5K, $6K, $9K, $20K, $25.
Wow.
And let's just say by the time it was done, I knew a little bit about the transaction and there was some stuff at the end, but it went for over $70,000. And this was a painting used for the cover for Risk. And just because how many people, played Risk and, college dorms or with their parents or everything. So I guess any art associated with those nostalgia hits, man, they can go for some money.
That's right.
I love it. So next panel, we've got James or Dino left.
Please, Dino.
I'll do my panel. So
all right.
So before you play, I do have a graphic. Somebody last week said they want graphics, so I have one for you. But let me just take you back. This is all about insights and creating tools that can make the hobby more enjoyable and I think more predictable for a lot of new collectors and folks who are just getting into this. So in my collecting, I've always been on the hunt for 3 main tools. The first is a valuation tool. When you look at the collection and the insurance and you want to create what's the value of my collection for insurance purposes? What is it that helps me get to that final value? It's something that I've been looking to ways to look in that. Second is a pricing tool. When you talk about heritage auctions, we can see historical data. So something sold 3 years ago or 10 years ago, what does that mean it's valued today? So is there a market appreciation index, almost like a S&P 500, or when you sell a car, a blue book, a Kelly Blue Book, that gives you some guide on what that natural appreciation or fair appreciation for the market and for that piece could be, so you can predict heritage auctions. And going back to what Jill said, if you're about to buy something big, you want to know kind of what's the value of pieces if I sell it that I can gain those months. So what would help me with that pricing? So that's the second tool. The third is a negotiation tool. For every deal that gets done, there's always a deal where both sides they're at an impasse. One says $1,000, the other says $2,000. They say, let's split the baby, it's $1,500, but neither wants to go there because you're just afraid that you're getting taken, right? And so how do you create an objective negotiation tool that allows both sides to say, you know what, this is a objective fair price, and we can both move on, right? We both decided you're going to sell, I'm going to buy. This is a fair price. We can both say, yeah, we got our value. I mean, I like to think in the NFL draft last weekend, there was 43 trades. No one negotiated trades because they work off a same sheet that gives a fair return on a certain draft pick or Kelley Blue Book for your car. So trying to find those tools, I've been always hunting for these three things. And then it dawned on me that they're all the same and they're all related. And I created what I'm going to share with you now that has been it's a unified, what I call fair market return tool that helps create a lot of better understanding of this whole market and craziness that's in our hobby. So Bill, why don't you put that up and I'll walk you through it. And it's elegant as well. So you can see on the left, basically, I use this concept called the rule of 72, which says in economics, how if you take 72 divide by a number, tells you how many years the value will double. And based on, I took 150 data points in my collection, plus about 150 more, where a piece has gone to auction twice over a period of time. And it comes out to me, in the past 10 years, we're kind of seeing an 18% fair market return, which means for the math majors out there, 72 divided by 4, which is doubles every 4 years, gives you the 18%. So if you look on the left there, this is a chart that anyone can use to give a fair approximation of value of any piece. So you look at how long you've owned it. In this case, 4 years ago, whatever you paid for it, if it appreciated like the entire market, it would suggest that it's worth twice as much. So now I have a tool to do that insurance valuation. I have a tool to kind of predict auction prices, because if I know that something sold on Heritage 6 years ago, then I can take that price and, assuming everything's equal, it'll be around 3 times market price today. But then some things are hotter than market. Those tend to be higher, and some things aren't. So you can actually, when you do an auction review and everyone's saying, wow, these are all record prices, strong price, the real question is, did that price underperform or overperform based on the overall market? And some people say, 18% doubling every 4 years. You can see that happening. I would invite anyone to take this upcoming auction and try it out. But the decade before, prior to 10 years ago, I think the market was actually doubling every 3 years. And so, Khalil, you're the math guy. 72 divided by 3 implied fair market return of 24%. All right, so it was actually a 24% fair market return. And let me tell you this. So first of all, this tells you if you're doing that negotiation and you say, you know what, you bought this piece, 8 years ago, it cost you $200. If you just sell for me 4 times, you're getting an 18% return. That's roughly getting the same return on your invested capital as Facebook. So you can see the Facebook chart here. You can see that if you work back, it actually works out perfectly toward the FMR chart that I've given you. So Facebook 4 years ago, it's $300 April 2021. 4 years ago, it was at $150. 8 years ago, it was at 75, and so on. And when it was IPO, it IPO'd at 38, which is of course half of 75, half of 150, and so on. So again, you're basically telling the other party, I'm going to give you, because you've decided to sell it, I'll give you a fair market return of 18%, which is basically what the overall market has performed. And that seller should say, okay, I'll take that money and I'll invest in something with more personal value on there. And as a buyer, you're saying, okay, I respect the fact that they've owned it for this period of time, so I'm going to give them a fair return on their money. So again, for me, this just captures a lot of it. There's one thing I wanted to add before I turn this over to the panelists. Everyone always talks about the future, and there's 2 trains of thought that I was trying to reconcile. One is, these prices can't keep climbing altogether, or else this Marvel team up page that I'm paying $1,000 today, we're going to be paying $200,000 in some distant future, and that won't work, right? And then the second pessimistic is, oh, the market's just going to fall off a cliff, and at some point all this stuff will just be worthless, like Hummel figurines. And what this concept can tell you is the future isn't like that. What you'll do is you'll down cycle. So as I said, last 2 decades ago, it was fair market returns about 24%, doubles every 3 years. Now we're kind of at the mode where it doubles every 4 years. next in 5 or 7 years, we may be going where the return doubles every 6 years. So 72 divided by 6 is 12. So it'll give a fair market return of 12%. 20 years from now, it'll be, call it 12%. So 72 divided by 12 is 6%. So you'd be, as a market matures, it tends to cycle down on the rate it takes to double in value. And that's the future, which gives everyone some confidence that things aren't just going to fall off a cliff, but you'll be able to kind of monitor how things are cycling and make your decisions accordingly. So for me, that was very illuminating and gives me a lot of confidence. So I've used this tool for the past 3 years. It's a great thing that I'm sure a lot of you folks will go home, pick your top 10 pieces or your collection and figure out, kind of get a good estimate of what that value is. It'll help you in trade pieces. Bill, if you can pan back to me. So when you have a sheet, you know what it cost, and the green line is what it cost. The blue line is kind of what my adjusted fair market return would be. So I can know if I'm going to go after a piece that costs X, I can make up that amount by these 3 or 4 pieces, and I'll know what to kind of cosign or sell to kind of get that. Now, of course, your mileage may vary, and the trick is, and I would argue that you want to invest, you want to buy art you love, which means maximize your personal value, but you also have to think about the timing of it and then put into pieces that you think will get you, hopefully, a return that's very similar to the market, if not better. And if you do that, you're able to kind of leverage that compounding into a larger collection. And this is how you get, you see a lot of the old time collectors and they have these great pieces and you think, how could they ever have afforded that? But you work through that time scale, and they were paying, $200 for a piece 20 years ago that are grail pieces, in 6 figures today. And how does that happen? Well, over time, they've kept them and they've kept them and they've kept them, and the values continue to grow. So I'll pause there. I was really happy to share this with you. This is about like, sharing things that can make this hobby a little bit more transparent to especially new collectors. I mean, all the old timers, they go by gut feel. They've seen everything. But for the new collectors or the collectors that are just actively building their collections, I think a tool like this could be helpful in a lot of different areas, like a Swiss Army knife. And hopefully you'll be able to take it and do some great things with it. So
I agree. One thing I would point out is, and sorry, Jill, was just that from the comments here at the end in the chat, that this probably is more of a tool for published work versus, say, commissions, convention sketches, and things that are unpublished. Although we're seeing, Mike has pointed this out to me numerous times. He's like, covers from the 70s, 60s are so expensive now that I'm seeing a big uptick in unpublished covers for that period because nobody can afford the published ones. But as far as commissions and things go, you're probably not going to see maybe the same growth in most cases there as you would where this would apply best to
you're right, but in benefit of Jill, because I know she'd probably bring this up. Actually, my solve for that is every commission has a lot of personal value, of course, but the more you customize is the less that applies to the value. So here's my example. We know that Alvin Hughes and commissions by him and by some artists that are just known for those values can translate right away to the same as published pieces. But if you're creating a commission, ask yourself what percentage of collectors would consider that for their collection. So if you're creating a commission of Thanos versus Daffy Duck, and it'll appeal to only 20% of collectors, then I would take if you pay $1,000, you can only apply the $200 to the FMR, and then that's the value that you'd expect to get on the market over time because you're removing a lot of that customization and personal value. Anyway, that's kind of more than what I bargained for. But a good question, and I think this is just part of my experience collecting again. Marvel and DC and some major independents, mostly, superhero 1960s through early 90s. Depending on what you collect, maybe you need to adjust the model a bit to reflect what you're doing. I mean, so that's something. This is totally flexible. But again, you're right, Bill. It doesn't apply to all parts of the market, but can if modified correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say these are statistical averages. So the data that you've done is just, but of course there's always going to be outliers. So when you're looking at your statistical bell curve, you're still going to get the one-offs, something is a grail. Unfortunately, maybe you've got a really famous piece by somebody who happens to pass away. The other factors that come into this that end up, you've got a piece that's clearly the basis for a hot new movie. Some of those things that'll
Absolutely
be exceptions to the norm.
And that's why it does take some sort of instinct, and that's why collecting is not a science, it's an art. It's something that we a lot of emotional factors, movies and just what we talk about surfer being very hot right now. Of course those are going to overperform, but that's not the goal, right? If you want to collect things that just are meaningful to you, it really doesn't matter what happens to the market, right? Because you're owning it to enjoy it. So this is not meant to do, this is just, again, a tool to think about, maybe helps you with deal making and understanding auctions and understanding value and what your collection has grown over time. It's always useful, but again, the focus should be the art you love, and hopefully this will allow you to kind of enjoy more of it.
So Dino, that list you created, have you put just about all your artwork on it, or those things that you would just, right personal value, right situation, you would let go of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I did, I buy a lot from and sell a lot through auctions. So I looked at what I purchased and how it performed in the auctions and vice versa. But then I'm going to geeked out. So how in astronomy, we're talking about stars and stuff, how they tell the distance of distant galaxies? There's these things called standard candles, which are certain stars that have a fixed brightness. So by looking at a distant galaxy, if you know what those fixed stars are and their brightness, you can calculate the distance from Earth, right? So I thought, okay, so what I'll do is I went through Heritage and Comic Link. I looked for things that are pieces that have been auctioned twice over a period of time. And those became the other 100 and so data points, is the same pieces being auctioned off in 2 to 3 or 5 year horizons and seeing what happens to value. Yeah, people can do this also with comparables. So if something hasn't been on the market before, you say, oh, this is a cover by Neil Adams and it's this character. Well, here's a similar one that sold 6 years ago, very similar, same artist, same style. I can use that value as a data point to kind of start predicting what I think the current value is based on market appreciation, right? So then you say, oh, this is a better example, so it'd probably go. So things that would sell 25 or 50% premium over a standard piece 20 years ago still holds through today, if not more. So those same outliers will continue to be outliers. But finding comps is the way to bridge that gap if that piece hasn't had a sales history.
Gotcha.
So something cool.
So when you've done a negotiation for an art sale, do you bring up the math or how you arrive to the price? Do you get to that level of detail?
You don't have to. I mean, I think what you want to do is if you're buying, you want to give a price so that the seller makes his or her own calculation and say, you know what, that's enough. And hopefully if they're really wanting to move the piece because they have their eye on something else, they're going to be more motivated to get something done. This is not one where two sides are both arguing over, where who's going to get the most out of their situation. You won't find a deal that way. But if both sides can say, you know what, for a win-win, I got enough. It's as if I invested in Facebook. That's a pretty good return. I'm going to take that money and buy something that I'm looking at. Or from a buyer, you're saying, okay, well, we all wish we had time machines. I wish I bought this when it came to auction 5 years ago, but I didn't. But I'm going to pay more now to allow the current owner to basically gain a market appreciation for what. And these numbers are all for, I mean, the 150 that are on this chat, maybe they keep this in their back pocket and use it to their advantage. I've certainly, enjoyed playing with it and kind of, it's time to share it with others and see what you guys can do with it. But it's something that it depends on that situation. You don't have. Sometimes it's better not to be too analytical and just say, you know what, I think that's a $400 piece. And if they do the math and they go, yeah, I only paid 120 for it about 6 years ago, that works for me. You'll get the piece that you want.
And so two things. I think
there's a meme.
Valuing your collection. What?
You stuttered there for just a moment. You froze. That's okay. Well,
All right.
it's not like that other time.
Yeah.
It's like that other time. Okay. What I was saying was, it's nice to kind of normalize, right, the value of your collection for insurance purposes. A few people have mentioned that, but also I think to get to and working through with another collector, whether or not they're really willing to buy something, right? You can kind of negotiate around this
That's right.
this model that you have, but anyone can say, well, in 3 or 4 years, it's going to be worth this.
And
but
you
it's
can
not
say your
3 or 4
piece is going to
right, and that's fair. You can say that if you want, but it is not 3 or 4 years from now.
That's
So
right. We're buying it
do you
now.
want to be talking about this or not? Right. So I think that you can kind of, thinking about this, kind of cut to the heart a little quicker.
Yeah, and it's also it's an elegant, by using multiplier, you don't walk around with a price guide that has 800 pages, but it's really helpful in trades. So for me, trades are one of the most difficult things because everyone has bias. But if you can say, okay, let's both tell each other what we paid for our pieces and when, and we'll put it through this formula, and we know that the differential is $250. So I'll pay you $250, Khalil, to equate the two pieces. We're both using an objective calculator or objective measure of it. I think that will be, very good for hopefully striking some deals where previously you're in an impasse. You're both saying, oh, each side values their piece too highly and no deal gets done.
Right. And Mikhail mentioned here, it's not, not your piece until you go through the transaction, right? So don't be too pushy. It's all relative, which is true, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, what we talked about last week, your personal value factors in above everything,
Yeah. Well, so again, this is just something that I thought was nice to share with you guys, and I think what for new collectors and folks who are actively building, it kind of gives you something to think about when you won't get surprised as much, when you hear people talk about that's a strong price, but you can say, well, not really, based on a fair market return, it's probably underperformed based on how long it's been out of the market. So, so it gives some clarity where otherwise this hobby is just too unpredictable.
Right.
Yeah, that was the goal for all that. So
that's great, man. And I like you got the data there, right? I think what's tough about data at times is that we all see it, right? Well, this one auction happened last week. So is that resetting the market or not? I think it's hard to tell 1 week later, but there are different thoughts on that.
That's why it's important to think of a big picture, right? Think of the decade or the 5-year period we're in. And, in 2 years from now, we may all come together again and say, the market's changed. It's actually gone up. It's now doubling every 3 years because the movies are just, kicking ass and everyone's buying things. So that's right. That's right.
We'll take it. Retirement plans in our portfolios, right? We should be a comic art investor advisor.
Remember, I never use the word investment. This is all about buying things you love. I do think it's helpful to when your family tells you, "What are you doing here?" You can say, "Well, look at this sheet. I've got something here that could be meaningful someday."
That sheet now just is worth $1 million. Hey, why are you buying art? I got a sheet. Perfect. It'll end so many arguments and happy marriages.
But I'm with you, Khalil. Like if you see a piece you want, you're like, well, what do I need to sell to get it? Well, again, if you understand that you can get that value by valuing these 3 pieces, and these have, again, lower personal value to you compared to other pieces, those are the ones to offer up. I think a lot of collectors, they'll offer too much. They'll sell too much and have a fire sale because they think they need to sell more than they need to get for the piece they want to buy. But in this market, a healthy return, 18% is significant. It's twice the stock market. It's something but again, it's just the market view, and your mileage will vary.
Right, and that's setting aside the whole fun factor, right? Just the whole fun.
You get it for fun. That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm
cool.
with you there.
I'd never be on a stock show.
But thank you, Dino. That was to me, when I saw the chart, I could see where you're going with it, and I agree in a lot of ways. And this isn't about investment. This is just helping you understand the value of your collection. It's how you could approach a trade when you're looking at making a purchase of something you see on Heritage. You can apply the same rule if you have a general knowledge of the market and what pieces might have sold for in the past. You should know about what you should pay. And and that helps set your comfort level. But it's definitely not this wasn't an investment guide in any way. It was more about So all right, no, great. This was
good.
2 great topics. So let's see, art next. Jill, would you like to go?
All right, let's go. I'll follow that up. Little palette cleanser, maybe not so much math. Oh, okay. So you guys, I had to. John Paul Leon, hats off to John Paul Leon, a life well lived, cut far, far, far too short. So I had to take a moment and find a piece of his that really kind of spoke to me. This is in the collection of Tim Dury. This was done at New York Comic Con 2017. So a few years old. And what I like about this piece is, number one, it's Batman. I feel like he was a really seminal Batman artist, and has Batwoman in it as well. Of course, shout out to the ladies. And this piece I just look at and there's just so much to see. His inks have layers to them, and there's just some subtlety to how he inked a lot of these pieces. The contrast between what you see, the inks that were done for the building versus the inks that you see on the figures. I just like this piece a lot. It's also kind of solemn and somber, which I felt kind of fit the mood for how we're feeling about John Paul Leon right now. And he was clearly an artist, and for a lot of people, kind of on their Mount Rushmore of artists. And so I just wanted to find a piece that I really liked of John Paul Leon.
This is a wonderful example.
Yeah.
Love all the ink. Just love all the ink on it. The way he used the. Yeah.
And clearly you can look at the building and yeah, for sure. Like I look at it and I see Chrysler Building, but it may not be that, but it's a good contrast between their modern outfits and, the Art Deco, which is an older building in the background.
I love how he did the hair, right? You see the white, the negative space, and that shows the hair in the back. And I always like bonus figures, like the bat signal, right? That's just a bonus in the picture, but it's art that's meaningful to a Batman piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we've got bricks. Collectors, we like bricks, right?
That is quite true as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
Nice.
All right, and your other artwork?
Yep. So
oh, wow.
I see Larry in the chat. Larry, I just picked this piece because it was pretty. Little shout out to you. This is a Bill Sienkiewicz piece. It is in ML's collection. ML is also in the chat, so I picked one of your pieces. What I like about this, there's a lot to like. Number one, it's not your standard piece because you don't see Superman's face. I also love the contrast in how it's light at the top, dark in the bottom. You've got, the purple clouds at the bottom. This is a part of ML's description, but he's right on. The purple clouds at the bottom are a great contrast to the light at the top and the sun rays. You also, this is not this is just part of his collection, and one of those iconic images that were, kind of spread around as kind of seminal Sienkiewicz. And the other thing, so I was talking to my friend Casey, who's another art collector, and her view on this piece, which I thought was very cool. But spoiler alert, at the very end of Smallville, which was that Superman show that was on for a few years, all you see is a little hint of the cape, and that's really all you see of the transformation to Superman at the very end of the show. So the little flip of the cape, the flip of the cape on here was just. It fit together so well. And the other thing you don't know is, is he flying to his doom? Is he flying to take on a big old villain? And is he flying to meet the JLA, or is he just flying home after a hard fought, battle? And is he going home to see Lois? You don't know. But that's why I think that this piece just really had layers. And so I wanted to share it with everybody today.
Yeah, great. My initial reaction with the the colors and being soft and warm and a sunset. I mean, Superman, one of his major themes has always been hope. So I mean, I guess he can fly toward anything, but my impression is it just represents that hope aspect of the Superman mythos.
I love the colors. I mean, this is a piece that in color has so much more dramatic effect than if it were black and white, right? Because the again, you were saying the layers, the different colors, the sky, the big, the shining sun in the middle of dark clouds. So, and the red cape, which is the foreshortening that was the Kirby started, and all artists, have their take on that's just awesome.
I totally agree with that's what I was thinking. What James mentioned was the hope aspect, right? So he's flying towards the sun, and Jill said, "You don't know what he's going to do, but you know he's going to do something good." I mean, the light is at the center, right where he is, right where the S is, and you just get that feeling when you look at it. And that's the most important aspect of the character, right? It's just how hopeful and how good he is.
Yeah, it's beautiful and very classic Sienkiewicz in the way it's, just the way it's painted. I mean, the cape is oversized. It doesn't matter, that it looks like a sail. It just adds to the whole piece and, makes it all the better, in my opinion.
Yeah. And all the comments are going wild with that. Yeah, it's a recreation in color from what you saw in the book. So yeah, when you got the owner of the piece chiming in there, like okay, all right, dude, you know better than anybody. Yep.
Yes.
And by the way, this should probably be a future topic that we talk about: how to say some of the difficult creator names. Sienkiewicz.
Exactly. Yeah. Not all of them are, when you sound them out, are not really close. I mean, that's one name that's been butchered by more collectors probably than any other.
Well, it's cool. He has it written that way on his con banner, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
When he first advertised on CAF, I think that ad image was there, and it was like Sin Kev Itch, so that he didn't even spell it out the right way. He just put it out there so you would know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I didn't even try the first 2 years of collecting. I was like, nope. We'll figure it out.
That Moon Knight guy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and just so I could see that there were a lot of other comments from Dino's conversation that we're not going to be able to really address or talk more about. But I don't think that chart scares off new collectors. I would just say that or the people just beginning in the hobby, because everybody starts at their different point. This was more of a evaluation guide, so you understand the value of your collection over time. I mean, everybody starts at their own point in the hobby, whether they have so much money that they can start out buying $5,000 interior pages, or they can only pick up a convention sketch or spend $200 on an interior by somebody's, who's maybe not as popular as another creator. So no, I don't think that these things should ever, or that didn't come off to me at all as something that it would scare away younger collectors, and I didn't see anybody really talking about it as investment. It's just being smart about what you have, so you know what you have in front of you, and if you're working on a deal, you can approach that better. It wasn't a negative or anything like that. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and then the way the panel was designed was to bring people with different experiences and different levels within the collection hobby, so that we can talk to different people in the audience. This is not a new collectors show, even though we will broach a lot of new collector topics. We want to have older, more established collectors or whoever, or people looking to make the next step, have content that they want to watch as well.
Agreed.
Amen.
All right, James. And on that note, you are next.
Speaking of new collectors. Now, so mine is a piggyback a little bit off of Khalil's topic last week on the shipping side, but it's basically how to keep your art safe, right? So I've actually broke this down into 3 mini topics that I'd like to kind of discuss with the panel on each one. And some of it, for the more seasoned, it could seem like rudimentary, but when I was coming in the hobby, and even now, I'm learning stuff on how to keep my art safe. So I broke it down into basically storage. How do I store my art for a long-term display, right? Because I've got displays behind me, but if your art's always stuck in a closet, some people appreciate that, but I need to see it, right? This is a hobby for me. There's a lot of enjoyment and fun for actually looking at it, and outside of a computer screen on CAF. So how do you display your art? What are some tips and tricks to make sure you're doing that safely, and then you're protecting that investment? And then finally, Dino touched on it a little bit, but insurance, right? What's out there? How do you help assess value? And that way you can protect that in case, some of those imaginable things happen. So start with the storage and the first thing is, how do you store individual pieces? So there's a couple of different methods from storing individual pieces. I think the most common that a lot of people see is the itoyas, or the portfolios, right? So, there's a lot of, and people gravitate toward those portfolios, the Itoya brand, and specifically because they're archival. So you're going to hear that theme over and over again: acid-free and archival, because the paper medium, is very, very prone to damage, very, very prone to chemicals, very, very prone to oils. And there's a lot of art that you guys have probably seen at auction from years and years ago that's gone through damage just from mishandling. So from the Itoya perspective, you can pick those up all over the place. But I found out for 11 by 17 standard art, the perfect size to get is 13 by 19. There's a lot of different options out there. I've gone through a few different options. There's 11 by 17 option, but you'll see your art, a lot of it doesn't fit. So I've got a 13 by 19 Karai Toyo, or I'm butchering that name every time. And you can see and this is an art flex, right? But 11 by 17, just fits perfectly. And even some stuff that's larger than 11 by 17. Yeah. So I've got all my 11 by 17 art that's not displayed in 13 by 19 folders. The other thing, I'm kind of known on CAF as loving double page splashes. So while 11 by 17 doesn't work in 11 by 17 portfolio, surprisingly, double page splashes work perfectly in the 17 by 22s. They fit absolutely perfectly and display perfectly. So if you're going to do, again, when you're picking up those folders, those are the two sizes I recommend. The other option is archival bags and boards, right? If you wanted to hold individual pieces. A lot of times people look at those options for older art, twice up art, or irregular size art. And you can get the bag and boards, Bags Unlimited, or I think the poly bags are at Hobby Lobby and everything. Just know, like, for the odd sizes, and I did it for a piece of art that I no longer own, you can go get archival mat board and actually cut out, if they don't have a standard size bag, just cut out archival mat board, put it in a poly bag. And if you have one that's a little bit larger, you can just kind of fold it around the corner. But that way you can kind of protect those individual pieces. Now, what I would not do is top loaders, right? Top loaders are not archival. Top loaders are phenomenal for shipping because they protect the art. You can put a top loader in a poly bag. You can put it in Masonite. You can go ahead and send it out. But I would recommend don't keep your art in the top loaders because the plastic has no archival benefits whatsoever. So the other thing too is where to store your art in your house, right? So the number one killer of art that I found out is moisture. So if you have, basements, or if you have any area that is prone to moisture, I would recommend, of course, not storing your art there. But find something that's moisture-free, dark preferably, because UV radiation and light can have an effect, and store it higher preferably. But don't, if you can avoid it, store on the top of your closet, because this has happened to me where you put 2 or 3 portfolios on top of each other and they're kind of different sizes. So you grab one and the other one falls and hits you in the head. So if you can avoid storing them really, really high places, and because the portfolios slide really, really easily, you're going to avoid some unwanted accidents. And the other thing too is I'm looking to invest in a large lockable drawer. What I found, if you find a blueprint filing cabinet, I think I've got a picture one I can share real quick. So I'm going to order something similar to this. Let's see if this works.
It's sometimes known as a flat file too, for those who are searching.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can sometimes find those in those repurposed store, places that tear apart buildings. I've seen a lot of those for sale. Here, I'll pull this up into the. Oh, wow. Yeah, if you shrink that screen left and right, it'll get bigger on the. Oh, you're sharing full screen. I'm sorry.
That's your tax return,
yeah.
James.
Right.
I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'll stop
Yeah,
sharing. But you guys get the general idea.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something I'm going to invest in particularly because it's lockable. You can store your art flat. It's heavy. So a lot of people, on the last chat asked about safes, and you can talk about fire safes and everything, but you're looking at exponential expenses at that point, and it's probably better just to go with an insurance route. But something along those lines, a blueprint file cabinet looks to be a good way once your collection gets to the point where you can fill something like that. Before I jump to display, open up the panel, anything from a storage perspective?
I can say I'm a big Itoya, or whatever it is pronounced, user, as you know. I mean, and I've had the same problem. I mean, I keep it low, and I still have portfolios slide out all the time when I pull one out of there. So that's like the only bad design part of those darn things, is that they are so slick. But I can say that I don't have a lot of experience with the preservation aspect. I know that a lot of people like to put archival material in with the art, and that's not an area that I have an understanding of at all. But I'd love to know more about it, because I think modern approaches to preserving the art is something that we should all consider and know more about, so that because again, it's all back to we're the caretakers of the art, so we need to do everything we can to ensure that the art's here for the next generation of collectors. And I don't have a fireproof safe or cabinet of any kind, but I've certainly considered it. And I do know many collectors and art dealers that have those large size 6 foot tall, 4 foot deep fire safes for their primary storage for their most select pieces. So it is a wise way to go. I mean, we've heard enough stories of really important artwork burning up or getting in a flood in their home, and none of us want to see that.
The issue I had with Itoyas when I started was the open end, right? Because if they're stacked up like a book and moisture, if someone drops some coffee, it could literally damage the arts in there. So I've seen a lot of collectors actually put it in a mylar, one of those little 2 mil mylars, really thin ones, fold it down and tape it, and then put it in the Itoya so it can protect it. I'm actually on the other side of the spectrum, so I don't own Itoyas. I use these archival. I have a stiff archival board, which is cool because you can hold it by one finger and the whole thing kind of stays stiff. It presents. I basically took everything off of frames so I can have a mat around it with an archival board with corners to hold the art, and it displays something you can share around. And you can see on the floor, I got a dog, I got kids who like to touch these things, so this kind of keeps fingers and dog hair out of the art. But also because, as James was saying, it's a little bit bigger than 11 by 7, so these are all 14 by 20, which gives it some protection in case it's damaged on the side. But I kind of like the fact that I can flip through art almost like a comic book long box, and they fit in kind of laundry bins or crates. I've got other things that I can actually flip through, and when I share art, I can just hand over like this, and it's not as heavy as a framed piece, but it presents almost as well. So
did you custom cut those things?
Yes. So I have I have a standard size, and I've got a twice up size, and this allows me, if you see my calf cave or things, I mean, they all look uniform as they're kind of displayed out, and so it's a way that I've I guess I don't have that many pieces, so I'm able to kind of keep things in a way that again, is easy to share, easy to transport, and certainly protects it in storage. So. But I was mostly concerned about the Itoyas not being able to be seen or to be damaged by moisture. So this is taped up and protects on all sides.
I'm gonna go put all my Itoyas in plastic bags now. Seriously.
Go get the Mylar for the
Yeah, they're actually big 24-inch or 36-inch Mylar Ziplocs that you can put them in. I know I've seen a lot of collectors do that.
Well, so my other highlights for mine, I use the portfolios, but they sit on top of my gun safe. So, So, I mean, I have definitely considered putting the art in the safe if I'm out of town for a while, but it would. ML's right about the ambient temperature. With the fire in there, it's still going to have some effect on the art. If you have a fire in your home. So, I don't tend to do that. But the other thing that I'll say is that if you do framing, I really do highly recommend museum glass on the fronts, especially if you're worried about some sort of direct or indirect sunlight. It is definitely pricier, but if you're going to display the piece and you feel like it's worth it, it is a good investment.
Yeah, and the museum glass has a clarity that's significantly higher than just about anything else. So, and it since it reflects reflection, and just by its design, you can see your art significantly better through those panes of glass. And Bill was mentioning
glare-free.
Yeah, and there's so many. You can get so nuanced in what you want from an archival perspective, right? The matting boards, the linen tape. If you're I didn't realize until Bill said something a couple of weeks ago I shouldn't use masking tape putting together my DPS pages. I'm like, well, so I had to go back and pull all the damn masking tape off and use archival tape, right? Just acid-free plastics, acid-free glass. Make sure that anything that touches your art has some type of acid-free aspect to it.
Yeah.
There's some people that get ultra, I guess, in depth, and they use gloves when they touch the art. And I'm nowhere near that. I'm more of an Anthony, where you just shake it around. So, yeah.
Cake in one hand, art on the other.
Yeah,
exactly.
Profit. It makes you feel like a baller. So, but on the display perspective, Jill was mentioning museum glass, and no direct sunlight. I've got the large window on there, but before I hung everything, I kind of watched the light throughout the day, make sure that I had no direct sunbeams. If you can go to any room in your house that has no windows, well, it's kind of a dreary room, but it is a good art room. So kind of consider hanging your art there. And then people don't think about it. LED bulbs, right? Give off significantly less UV radiation. So if you can invest in LED bulbs for anything that your art is associated with, that's going to go a long way. And the final thing, for a display perspective, I'd recommend not displaying Copic markers or anything that's not India ink. It will naturally fade as is, unfortunately, just being in a dark portfolio, because they're alcohol based and they don't really stain the paper itself. So, at a long enough timeline, fortunately, anyone that has Coptic art will have some type of degradation. And if you display it, you're just going to enhance it. So there's some beautiful, beautiful pieces out there. But I would say kind of keep those more in those dark, moisture-free places.
Hey, James, someone said something funny. They said if someone could come up with a 11.5 by 17.5 portfolio, they retire.
That's right. They'll sell them all.
Man, yeah, that's why you got to go with 13 by 19. I use the same thing. I know some people will use the Blick. I think the Blick portfolios. As far as displaying, I can't add anything else. Museum glass. If you're going to display it, you might, and it's worth displaying, you might as well go that extra route for protection and for being able to look at it the way you want to look at it.
One other quick note: make sure the glass, get a mat, please, because if the glass is right up next to the art, again, that's another point of degradation.
Because moisture gets in there. Yeah.
Yep.
So if you got the mat, and it keeps the art from hitting right up against the glass, and so that's what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. And everything that I have framed is on archival corners, so it's not actually linen taped or taped at all. Be careful on your framer on that one. They use basically just Mylar that they tape over and create little pockets that the art fits in. Right. So if I need to take it out of the frame, it comes right off. So frame it yourself if you got the skills. I sure as heck don't. But putting a little research in your framing, especially on pieces that are worth X amount of money, will go a long way.
So some tips that a museum curator shared with me are two things. One is people oftentimes display art that's too high, that people can't really say. Obviously, sometimes you want to get out of the way, but if you really want to have it on a wall to be seen and enjoyed, the optimal level is much lower than you think. So think about like people when they come in and they're not as tall as Khalil, they still want to be able to appreciate the art. The second thing is, and you can experiment with this, is museum matting. They use an optical illusion by having the bottom of the mat is actually larger than the top margin, and that creates more depth. And it originated when they used to hang Victorian paintings from the ceiling, and you're looking up at it, by having the bottom margin larger, it makes the art pop to the viewer. Well, that same thing is done to display art pieces, paintings. You go to the MoMA or the Met, and you can look at the frames, and you go, wow, yeah, that bottom mat is pretty much bigger. It's about 25% larger than the top. It's an optical illusion. It makes the art like more receiving, what do you call it? It pops out to the viewer. I thought that was cool.
Definitely.
And then the last subsection on keeping your art safe, and I'm not going to go into it too in depth because I'm not a card carrying insurance agent. But first thing, no, there is insurance out there. I had no clue of what kind of collectible insurance there was. A lot of people will look through their homeowners policies, and you can talk to your agents on there, but you can adjust your homeowners policy. But I think Collect Insure is a collection specific insurance organization a lot of people have a lot of success with. Compare pricing, but usually the pricing comes in a lot better than your homeowner's policy. I'm getting no commissions from them by saying this. So, but the one thing I will say from a practice perspective, and this leads into what Dina was talking about, just kind of assessing value, is actually assess the value of your artwork on some type of, quarter, semi-annual, or some type of regular basis, right? And if you can collect any data that can use to prove that value, and we're talking once every 6 months, if you unfortunately have a catastrophic event, it'll allow you to get that replacement value a lot easier than if you didn't have that data. Because at that point, you're probably just going off of what you bought your piece for if it was in an auction. And if that was a couple years ago, I mean, you might be losing thousands of dollars, or you'd have to argue with the insurance adjuster. So if you've got a collection and you're worried about keeping it safe, if you're worried about the value, take a little bit of time and just document, even sloppily, I guess, but something, so that you can prove that value if you go through the insurance route to be able to replace that collection if something were to happen.
Yeah. Two points. The collectibles insurance, you can do select pieces. So if you have 60 pieces, you can just have them insure your top 5 pieces, and then you don't have to worry about the rest of them, which is always helpful. And two is, with the insurance value, it's that is something that you have to set the number so that in case something does happen, that you're not going to be disappointed, right? When you have to, obviously replacing art is not something you want to do, but at least by having that established that value, it kind of makes sure that the insurance will be forthcoming so that you can find something else that you may like as much, if not more. So.
Yeah, and Eric had a question in the chat, and that's kind of my question too, because there should be a couple different answers. But how do you get it appraised, right? I mean,
yeah. So dealers will often, for the longest time, they've been the source of appraisers. You can go up to them; they'll actually, you can quote them as far as what they think market value is, or you can come up with ways of coming up yourself, using comparables, using fair market return, like we talked about earlier, or even just saying based on what you think similar auction prices recently. What you meant in James, to do it every 6 months. I think the insurance agencies, as long as you kind of keep it current, at 6 months or every 2 years is even fine. But if you use a kind of a multiple, by using FMR, I don't have to do it, because every year I can just add on another year of appreciation, and that kind of becomes my standard, and I can adjust individual pieces accordingly. That helps for insurance. That way I submit it every year, and it's fine.
Well, I can tell you that we are actually working on that export function out of CAF.
That'd be
so
nice.
So that people can get a CSV file and import it and update that regularly and give them something that they could present to an insurance company. So it's something that I talked with Maureen about it on Friday. And so barring too many Comic Art Live updates that we need to make before the next 2 weeks, we will try to get that done really soon.
I mean, with an export like that, Bill, you could kind of say, if people were showing what they bought it for, when they bought it, the provenance, if they put in their market value whenever they did, you can export that, and you can,
it's your record.
Put in a little formula to kind of say, if I bought it 2005, I'm going to add this percent to it, or what I mean, just to kind of play with it, right? Play with the data and get to a place hopefully pretty quick on it. Yeah. That'll be helpful,
I agree.
man, for sure.
No, that's top of the list now. All right. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, what do we got left here? Khalil, we get to talk about your artwork next.
Cool. Let's end with some art, man.
All right. And here is the first one.
Okay, so this is great Gene Colan. I found Gene's work a little later myself. A lot of his stuff was before I was, born, before I was reading comics and all that. But I saw this example pretty recently, and this is in the collection of Maycall Senzaqua. It's in Italy. Sorry if I'm saying that name incorrectly, but I thought it was just a great example of the sequential nature of art, especially from an action scene storytelling perspective. So you got an establishing two headshots, and there's a little bit of depth there in that panel one, with one being the woman being a little closer than the character behind. And then you see that great pose with the Daredevil jumping over, doing the splits, and you can see Cobra kind of coming at us a bit. There's that depth exhibited, and there's just a lot of action to it. Then you go to that next panel there, which what's cool is that it's not like a square, right? You can see it's kind of an L shape, but that helps with the storytelling. Opens it up on the left for Jester to toss his, and then for Daredevil to dodge. And you can see how the sound effect lettering breaks panels subtly, and I love that effect in comics. Like, it's not overt, but it adds a splashy nature, whether it's a character or like here a sound effect breaking the panel there. And just a lot of movement and depth in that middle panel there, and you can see how big Daredevil's his left hand is there. And I know that Colan's not, I guess he's not known for sometimes having the best figure work. It can be a little wonky, but even if that was the case here, that doesn't take anything away. And then you move down a bit after that nice action shot, and you kind of go a little zoom in and get Daredevil's radar sense. And I love that his eyes are black then. And it just helps with I would say, the enhancing the effect of the radar circles. And then look at that silhouette to the right. I mean, you can see it's a silhouette, knowing that knowing it's Daredevil viewing via his radar sense, and then you've got the Jester's weapon coming right at you. I mean, you're just a great flow as you move all the way down, and I was really impressed with just the sequential nature of the action when I saw it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'll tell you, when I was setting up this slide, I had a really difficult time deciding which panel I wanted to focus on, because I love the bottom right panel in silhouette. I love Jester in the center panel. And I love the action and the flow and the movement in the panel that I selected. So, Colan really did a bang up job on Daredevil. I didn't appreciate it at the time when I was reading Daredevil, but I appreciate it so much more today. And I wish I had seen what I saw. I wish I looked at it in the same way when I was reading the book, because at the time I didn't think much of it. But I look at his work today, and it's genius.
Yeah, and this is I didn't read this story. I don't know anything about it. I never read this comic. Just liked this page when I saw it.
I'll tell you, majority of my collection is splashes and covers, and I think I've seen a little bit of evolution of my appreciation of the panel page. And I've talked to a couple artists and asked them, what's the hardest thing to draw? And I always expected the cover, the double page splash, but they're like, I can just do one big image. When I do a panel page, I'm basically drawing, like I said, 5 or 6 different little action scenes. And so when things are starting to flow, when you see, I don't know, it's just, as I've grown in the hobby, my appreciation of a fantastic panel page has definitely increased.
Cool.
It's an art in and of itself. Page. All right, and the final artwork.
All right, so I flipped to a more pinup-y shot here. And speaking of Sienkiewicz and Moon Knight from earlier, we've got a Moon Knight here by Alex Maleev. I believe this is in the collection of Steve N. So to me, right, Alex, it took me a little while to kind of appreciate his stuff. And I just loved the atmosphere, right? So you just kind of feel it's perfect setting for Moon Knight. And I love I guess the word is inexactness of the watercolor. That's what he's great at. But also pair that with the exactness of the pillar there. So much great detail, and look at the lighting effect coming up from the bottom. I love that Moon Knight's actual body there has got the exact lines, but his hood is not outlined. You just kind of see the white, and you can see that moon crescent that's not outlined either in the back. So, I mean, overall, I think it's just a great example by him. The Jason Husa, he's a great commenter here on CAF. He has a great comment on this piece that lays a lot of it out. But I think just a great example of Maliv's skills all around, from the looser watercolor work to that nice detail and then the atmosphere that he can bring to a piece.
That's a master of watercolor right there. Just the effects you can get from it and things that look like smoke and fog and the clouds rolling in. It's hard to do that in watercolor. This is great.
Yeah, it's impressive. And yeah, if you were to go on CAF and kind of zoom in a little bit there on the detail on the building he's on, it's killer. And it just looks so cool because you can tell, that the lighting effect is coming from the bottom. It shows up so nicely.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's so challenging, right? When you have a backlit, anyone doing Zoom calls with a backlit, you look like you can't make out any figure. So he's actually taking that challenge, and you can see very, dark but defined lines on his body and the pillar itself with lighting underneath. That's tough to do as well. So this is definitely a high degree of difficulty, but comes off so well. And as you said, just so cool looking. Exactly what you'd expect from Moon Knight.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
We like the Art Deco buildings today, apparently.
Yes,
right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's true. The synchronicity of your art selections this evening.
Congratulations. Those are great pieces.
Yeah. Michael and Steve. Cool.
All right. Well, we went a little over what we were going to always try to stick to, but I think it was we needed to put this time in tonight. So this was a lot of fun. I think a lot was, we talked about a lot of really important topics that we can dive deeper into later on as well. I mean, I know that storage has been a big question that I get regularly through CAF because we don't have anything out there that talks about that. So it's one of the more important topics I think that we've covered so far, as well as insurance. That's, I get asked a lot of questions about insurance, and I really don't have any advice on that because I've never felt my collection was worthy of being insured. But it's definitely something that everyone should consider.
Yeah. And I know, again, one of the goals of the show was to bring different voices. So, I think the panel, Bill, is going to rotate a little bit next week. I know, I'll take a step back and,
Me too.
Be on a future show, but, you talk to Bill, and I think Bill will reach out as well. But look forward to, seeing the topics next week and the voices next week as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very true.
Like, subscribe, all that. We got to put that in, right?
That is very true.
Subscribe, comment, send us your questions, comments, feedback, nicknames,
right? We didn't get enough of those tonight. But yeah, please, everybody should email me more suggestions on the topics that you'd like us to cover.
Happy to talk about anything. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right.
So happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Yep.
Enjoy your Sunday evening.
Happy collecting.